I was in the basement, wrestling with the air conditioner drain when the phone rang. Clara was in the kitchen, so I left it to her. I could hear her voice faintly through the air vent from upstairs. "Hello, Brianna. It's been ages, hasn't it?" I never quite warmed up to Brianna. She was an old friend of Clara's from high school, and I always had a sense of unease whenever she came up in conversation. Fortunately, we had moved away from Lancaster not long after we got married. I wished it had been farther. "Yeah, time flies. 8 years already? So, what's up?" The conversation didn't sit well with me, but I only had Clara's side of it. "Brianna, hang on a second. Ernest is downstairs. Let me close the door. I'll be right back." Clara put the phone down as she walked across the room to shut the door. I hurriedly picked up the extension phone on the wall. "Hi, Brianna. I'm back. What's going on?" "Clara, there's a medical equipment convention happening at the Lancaster Holiday Inn next weekend, and guess who's going to be there?" "No way. Are both of them going to be there?" "Both of them. They're arriving Friday night and staying the whole weekend." "How do you know this?" "Jermaine called me this morning, practically begging to see you. He asked me to call and see if I could convince you to come down to Lancaster for the weekend. It'll just be you, me, Jermaine, and Henry." I clenched the rag over the phone's receiver. I wanted to reach through the line and shake Brianna. What on earth was she suggesting? "I don't know, Brianna. I'd love to come down if I can manage it. I'll have to do some sweet talking with Ernest. I'll let you know as soon as I can." "Remember the good times we had at the last convention when they were here, Clara?" "I remember them every time I make breakfast for the kids." "I can't believe you had the nerve to name that kid Jermaine." "Why not?" "Ernest is clueless. He thinks Jermaine is his, even though they look nothing alike." Gosh, this conversation was just getting messier by the minute. I quickly pieced together the past. Clara and Brianna had a fling with 2 guys 8 years ago, and Clara ended up pregnant with Jermaine. She passed him off as mine and never breathed a word about the affair, and now they were planning to see those guys again. "Brianna, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If I can't manage an overnight, I might at least make it down there for the day." "It's better than nothing," I said. "Okay, just let me know," Brianna replied. After we all hung up, I had some time to think. We had 3 kids. Lucy and Sophia were in high school, both bright and good-looking, working hard for college. Then there was Jermaine, who showed up about 8 years ago. The girls were motivated, but Jermaine lacked inspiration. He wasn't into school or sports, but I still liked him, flaws and all. Clara called from upstairs. "Ernest, how are you doing down there? Want some coffee?" "I'm almost finished. Be up in a minute." "I think I'll take a shower before doing anything else," I replied. After a long, steamy shower, I settled in front of the TV with the family, my mind swirling with thoughts. Clara's actions weren't a mere mistake to brush off. They were deliberate and planned. I grappled with the decision to either maintain the status quo or intervene. If I chose the latter, I had to figure out how. It felt surreal. I'd been married to Clara for 20 years, never suspecting she might be unfaithful. "Ernest, I had a chat with Brianna from Lancaster today. She invited me over for the weekend. Any issues with that?" Clara's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Not really. I'll be swamped at work, so as long as my folks can look after the kids, it's fine on one condition," I replied. "What's that?" "Make sure you take your cell phone in case of any issues, okay?" "Thanks, dear. I'll take it and promise no issues. The Volvo wagon is reliable, and I can load up on goodies. I'll head down Friday morning and be back Sunday night. Is that all right?" "Sounds good to me. Enjoy." As Clara headed to the kitchen, I overheard her confirming plans with Brianna for the weekend. She seemed utterly unconcerned about the affair or its potential fallout. I excused myself to do some computer work, intending to stay up later. Finding the website for the East Coast Medical Equipment Dealers Convention in Lancaster wasn't difficult. Everything I needed to know about the convention was right there. The displays were all listed along with a floor map, and they provided a schedule of lectures and seminars, detailing times and locations. They even had a roster of attendees, including their hotel room numbers. Jermaine Kirkland and Henry Baxter were sharing Suite 411 from Friday through Monday. I found their home addresses and phone numbers in Baltimore. I discovered a company offering DNA tests by mail, covering everything from paternity verification to probable national origin, most of which were under $100. The samples could be taken at home and mailed in with a check or paid for online. I completed the application forms on the website and paid for the 4 paternity tests using PayPal. After printing out the collection instructions, I gathered all the necessary items to obtain the samples. I printed a mailing label and prepared a padded priority envelope to send everything in. Additionally, I readied several CD mailers and a stack of blank CDs. Jermaine and Henry's wives would undoubtedly want a copy of the evening's activities. I worked for a corporate security consultation firm with flexible hours, and since I had accrued some comp time, I decided to take the week off. Another perk of the job was access to various equipment for collecting information. By now, I had pretty much made up my mind that the marriage was over. The fact that she had an affair 8 years ago and convinced me to raise the kid was bad enough, but the way Brianna and she were joking about making a fool of me was intolerable. There was no way I could forgive that. Now she was doing it again. That would have to be the end of it for good. The following day, I gathered DNA samples from the kids, and they found it fascinating. Afterwards, I headed to the bank and transferred nearly all of our savings into a college trust fund for Lucy and Sophia, retaining $12,000 in cash. This way, I ensured the trust would be secure from my wife or any potential legal entanglements. I arranged to cancel all credit cards and the joint checking account on Monday morning, opening a new account in my name alone. I planned to secure the house so Clara would need to find alternative accommodation. Although I anticipated she might find a legal route to enter, I aimed to have other matters settled by then. As for our son, Jermaine, we'd address his situation later. Despite not being my biological child, I felt a responsibility toward him. I visited Jesse Blackwell, our family lawyer since arriving in Reading. Jesse was fair, diligent, and someone I trusted. After explaining the situation, he urged me to ensure there was no chance of reconciliation. Alongside initiating divorce proceedings, I asked him to reach out to Jermaine Kirkland regarding my son. I suggested either $500 a month in retroactive child support or for him to take full custody and responsibility. Alternatively, I proposed he relinquish all rights to Jermaine so I could pursue adoption. I was confident he would opt for the latter. Jesse had all the necessary information, and I promised to provide him with photos and audio recordings. He gave me the office email address and pre-addressed mailers for hard copies. Grace Bennett, our real estate agent, was undeniably abrasive, but she was also hardworking and driven. I listed our house with her and signed several powers of attorney. I made it clear that she would need to handle any necessary signatures from Claire herself. She laughed confidently, assuring me there would be no issues. I informed her that the locksmith would provide her with a set of the new keys. The most suitable tool for the job was the wireless video camera, cleverly disguised as a smoke detector. I acquired 2 of these along with 4 bugs. Additionally, I gathered a clipboard, a set of company logo Dickies, and 3 laptops. Crafting a work order on official company forms, I arranged to replace a faulty smoke detector in room 411. All the necessary recording equipment would be discreetly packed into a regular suitcase, alongside the computers. I brought along a small stepladder as well. For accommodations, I booked room 311 at the Holiday Inn under a different name, specifically for Friday. Knowing it had wireless internet, it suited my needs perfectly. Walmart had the best deals on throwaway cell phones, so I grabbed 2 just in case. A few years ago, my parents moved to an old farmhouse near Lebanon. It was too spacious for just the 2 of them, but it fulfilled my dad's lifelong dream. He maintained a large garden, tended to chickens, and cultivated an orchard. Jermaine enjoyed visiting there. My parents were gracious enough to accommodate us for as long as needed. My dad, although fond of Jermaine, called him Jackson, claiming Jermaine sounded like a sandwich vendor. Oddly enough, Jermaine seemed to prefer being called Jackson. Some years back, Dad purchased a large motorhome and a small Kia to tow behind it. He used it only 3 times before losing interest. I instructed Dad to prepare the motorhome for use. I knew the girls would protest being away from their friends for the summer. With 1 more year of high school before college, they aimed to attend a prep school in Vermont. Clara was hesitant to spend the money. Despite being a year apart in age, they were in the same grade, don't ask. I hadn't figured out Germain's schooling yet. That would come later. For now, I had other matters to attend to. At least all the kids enjoyed spending time with my parents. Clara left early the next morning, expressing gratitude once again for letting her spend time with her friends. As I instructed the kids to pack for an extended trip, I anticipated the complaints, especially from the girls. However, when I mentioned the brochures from the Burlington Prep School, suddenly everything seemed more appealing. They packed their school clothes just in case. Surprisingly, Germain showed genuine enthusiasm for the trip. Lucy approached me, her expression serious. "What's up, Lucy? Are you all packed?" "Dad, I'm 17. I'm not a kid anymore. Tell me what's going on." "I'm not sure I understand." "Are you and Mom having problems?" "I don't think that's something I want to discuss with you. If there were any issues, your mother and I would try to keep them from you. Why don't you finish getting your things together?" "No, Dad. I mean it. It feels different this time. Sophia and I want to know what's happening. We feel we have a right to know." I had been avoiding discussing it with her, but I knew the topic would surface eventually. "Okay, I'm not feeling very happy about the relationship between your mother and me right now. Things aren't looking good for us. I don't know exactly what's wrong, but I sense something's off." "Is Mom cheating on you?" I hesitated for a long moment. "I'm not sure, but I think so." Lucy turned and shouted up the stairs. "You were right, Sophia." "What's going on?" I asked. "I think I'd better let Sophia tell you," Lucy replied. Sophia was coming down the stairs towards us. "Tell him, Sophia." "Do I really have to?" Sophia asked. "Yes, he knows, but you still need to tell him." Sophia glanced down, then began to speak hesitantly. "Around 4 months back, I was skipping school with this guy from my lab class. We swung by the house so I could grab some CDs. It was a Wednesday, Mom's usual shopping day. You were away on a job in Boston, I believe. As we were walking down the street, we saw a gold SUV pull into the driveway. Marcus, one of your coworkers, got out and Mom let him in. We hung around outside for almost 2 hours until he left. I waited for another 10 minutes before going inside. Mom was in the shower, and the bed in your room was all messed up. I left and went back to school for the rest of the day. When we got home, Mom had started dinner. The bed was made, and there was a load of sheets in the dryer. I told Lucy, but she didn't believe me. There was silence for about 30 seconds. "Thank you for telling me, girls. It's not something I wanted to hear, but I'm glad you told me." Lucy noticed a tear in my eye. She grabbed Sophia's arm, and they went back upstairs without saying another word. Dad showed up just as the locksmith arrived. While the locks were being changed, I packed all of Clara's clothes, shoes, and personal items into 33-gallon trash bags. They pretty much filled the back of my Navigator. After talking with the girls, I decided to stop by work before heading to the convention. CenterX was a local company that was rapidly expanding across the county. Their marketing team had done an excellent job finding new areas for expansion, but the company couldn't train people fast enough, especially for management positions. They had been trying to convince me to take a new office, offering several different locations to pique my interest. Clara refused to move and wouldn't even discuss it. If I stayed where I was, I'd be stuck in the same position forever. Moving would mean a promotion, more money, and a bit of power. I headed straight to the office of the company president. "Can I speak with Mr. Frost for a few minutes?" "I think he can fit you in, Ernest. Just a moment." I always got along well with Frost's secretary, and I felt she liked me too. Nick Frost emerged from his office and extended his hand. "I hope you've got good news, Ernest." "Well, yes and no." "Hazel, bring some coffee into the office and hold my calls for a while." "Sure thing. What can I do for you, Ernest?" Firstly, I'd like to be reconsidered for one of the new management positions at a site where you think I'd be most valuable. That's fantastic news. If you're open, I have a great position in mind for you. How does Anchorage sound? Believe it or not, that sounds perfect. Is the first week of September okay with you? I think that should work. I'll have HR get started on everything Monday. What's the second thing? Well, I know this might sound odd, but I'd like Marcus Reed to be sent up there to work for me. Nick leaned back in his chair, chuckling. You figured it out, didn't you? I don't know what you mean, Mr. Frost. I couldn't keep a straight face as I said it. Ernest, nobody felt comfortable speaking up to you about this. I didn't approve of what was happening, but I was at a loss about what to do. If I fired Marcus, I was worried you'd find out, and I wanted to spare you that. I thought it best to handle it quietly. Unfortunately, Marcus Reed couldn't keep his mouth shut. He started boasting about his affair with your wife. His secretary, Stella, came to me upset when Marcus began flaunting pictures of him and your wife on his computer. The legal team is drafting something up, but I've been keeping them on a tight leash to protect you. Now that you're aware, I can just fire Marcus. It's a lot more practical than spending money to send him to Alaska just so you can fire him there. You're right. I was hoping to cause a bit more damage, but I suppose revenge isn't the best management technique. I'll go along with whatever you think is fair. Nick pressed his intercom button. Hazel, get me Stella Bailey. After briefing Stella on our plan, we headed to Marcus's office. Marcus was away on a job in Allentown. Stella Bailey was striking. She was just shy of 30 and aging gracefully. Her auburn hair and blue eyes were captivating. Despite being barely over 5 feet tall, she had the presence of an Amazon. I couldn't fathom how Marcus ended up with the best secretary in the building. Later, I learned she had requested a transfer to my office 3 times, but my secretary refused to let her go. You'll need these, she said, handing over 4 blank CDs. Look under Accounts Pending, click on Stoddard. Make one for yourself, one for your lawyer, one for our legal department, and one for Marcus's wife. I have mailers ready, but I need your lawyer's name. I was impressed by her efficiency. Stella knew exactly what she was doing and how to do it. Jess Blackwell. His office is on Franklin Street. Nick and I entered Marcus's office as Stella began typing the final address label. Inside, we found 20 compromising photos of Marcus and Clara. They were low quality, appearing to be taken from a webcam feed. It was likely that Marcus had a full-length video somewhere. Notably, these photos weren't taken in our bedroom. Nick tried to maintain politeness, but he couldn't help but scrutinize what my wife was doing in those pictures. I felt a pang of frustration, knowing that every guy in the building probably saw what I was seeing now. After inspecting them, I simply copied the files onto blank CDs. Stella poked her head in. Delete the entire file once you're done copying that garbage. Handing Stella 4 discs, I received one back. Make sure your kids don't stumble upon this. I'll mail these 3 out on Monday morning. I briefed Nick on my plan at the Holiday Inn. He wasn't keen on involving the company, but he agreed to go along with it. We had a work crew nearby on Monday, and he promised they'd swing by to remove the cameras I intended to install. Nick and I shook hands, expressing mutual gratitude. I suppose that was a productive meeting. The journey from Reading to Lancaster took approximately an hour. After finding parking at the rear, I registered, paid in cash, and received my key. My first order of business was changing into my work attire. The housekeeping maid on the 4th floor was friendly, and upon showing her my work order, she allowed me into the room since it hadn't been occupied yet. Installing the fake smoke detectors took only about 20 minutes. The room boasted 2 queen-size beds, and I strategically placed the cameras to capture each bed and part of the room. It was a breeze. I was a professional. I hoped the occupants wouldn't notice the extra smoke detector. Returning to the room, I changed clothes and began setting up my equipment. The pizza delivery arrived approximately half an hour later. By 3 o'clock, everything was in place. Both cameras were functioning flawlessly, providing clear images even in standard room lighting. My laptop was connected to a high-speed internet, ready to go. One camera was set to record upon detecting motion. while the other I would operate manually. Damn, I loved my job. However, I encountered one problem. I didn't know where Clara was. I dialed her cell phone. "Hey, Ernest." Clara's name flashed on the caller ID. "Hey, Clara. Just checking in. The kids are with my parents, and I'm still at work. Where are you now?" "We're still at Brianna's. Victor, her husband, is looking after their kids. Brianna and I are heading to a sleepover at Layla Winters' place. Some other girls from school will be there. Should be fun." "Sounds like a blast. Take some pics." "In your dreams, you perv." "Who's this Victor guy Brianna's with? Do I know him?" "I think so. Victor Merrick. He was on the football team with you." "Ha, Victor. I remember him. How's he looking?" "A bit heavier, a bit balder, a bit mellower." "Sounds like normal aging. All right, Clara. I'll let you go. Have fun and call if you need anything. Love you." "Love you too. Bye." I remembered Victor, big and nasty. If they're leaving, they'll be here soon. They'd probably use Clara's car, which works for me. There was some activity in the room. Camera 1 started recording as planned. They were both big guys. Jermaine had dark hair and eyes. Henry was a bit bald and pale. Both seemed fit. Jermaine's phone rang, picked up by the bug. "Hello, you've reached the stud farm. How may I assist you?" The two of them found that amusing. I wondered how many times they'd used that line before. "Well, darling, we're here and ready for action. What can we do for you?" I assumed he was addressing Brianna. "All right, the Outback it is. We'll meet you downstairs in about 2 minutes." At least they were going to grab a bite first. I sat there seething about the whole situation. If I weren't so engrossed in what I was doing, I'd probably be gearing up to confront someone. I swiftly left the room and made my way to the stairwell at the end of the hall. Standing just outside the building's corner, I could see Clara and Brianna waiting in the lobby, giggling like schoolgirls. A minute later, Jermaine and Henry emerged from the elevator. Clara immediately linked arms with Jermaine and planted a kiss on his cheek, the kind a wife gives her husband. The four of them walked out and got into a black Mercedes. As they drove away, I scanned the parking lot and found the Volvo parked in the back row. At least she was trying to be discreet. About 5 minutes later, I was loading trash bags filled with her clothes and belongings into the trunk. I was sure she would return from the restaurant a bit tipsy and not notice anything in the car. I left a note on the driver's seat explaining that the locks had been changed on the house and that I was taking the kids on an extended vacation. Then I drove over to Taco Bell and filled up on a burrito supreme. They were getting baby back ribs while I was left with fast food. Life just isn't fair. I retreated to my room and braced myself for what was coming. I pondered over my options, knowing I had roughly an hour before they returned. While I anticipated their arrival, I wasn't entirely sure how I would react. It was clear they weren't convening for a game of canasta. The impending events of the night weighed heavily on my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I had believed Clara, and I shared a content life. She never once complained or hinted at dissatisfaction. Yet her deception regarding Jermaine's paternity shattered that illusion. She had spun a tale about being glad to have a son, but I couldn't help but wonder if she secretly congratulated Jermaine's biological father. Reflecting on it was disheartening. I regretted the years I spent with a woman who could betray me without a second thought, who found amusement in deceiving me into raising another man's child. Compassion for her was hard to summon at this point. Despite my emotions, I busied myself with preparations. I might have overdone it, but I couldn't afford to miss any opportunity. They burst into the room, their laughter filling the air. Henry brought a bottle, and within a minute, the glasses were filled, the revelry in full swing. Over the next few hours, things began to happen that almost made me sick. There was only one thing to be happy about. I now had excellent quality footage. During the break in room 411, Brianna headed for a shower as Clara brushed her teeth. Jermaine and Henry relaxed with a couple of beers. I grabbed a disposable phone and dialed Baltimore. "Hi, Mrs. Kirkland. This is Terrence Raines at the Medical Equipment Convention in Lancaster. Are you Jermaine Kirkland's wife?" "Yes, but he's not here." "I know. Your husband and Mr. Baxter received special recognition tonight at the convention. We'd like to email you the ceremony photos. Do you have an email we could send them to? Of course. It's ekirkland@bubu.net. Great. Do you happen to have Henry Baxter's wife's email as well so I can send the pictures together? Sure. She's at bbaxter@balt.com. Okay, that's all I need. You should have the pictures shortly. Mrs. Kirkland could track the transmissions to the hotel's wireless link, but I wasn't concerned since there was no connection to me. Meanwhile, in room 411, they were taking a break and chatting. So, Clara, is your dear husband taking good care of my son for me? Of course, silly. It's been 8 years, and he still hasn't figured out the kid's not his. Ernest lives in his own world. He couldn't figure it out even if a letter came in the mail. It'd be nice if you sent a birthday present or something now and then. Wow, that'd be something. All he needs is a hint like that to catch on, Bran remarked. I've got 3 little rugrats running around at home, and my idiot isn't the father of any of them. He's so busy chugging beers, he'd never figure out they weren't his. Everyone chuckled at Victor's expense, and I had a perfect soundbite. Growing bored with the gathering, I decided to call it a night. Logging onto xxcam.online.com, I found an unused room and set up a live feed from room 411. With a title like Clara and Brianna entertain Germaine and Henry, I knew I'd attract viewers. My wife and her friend had decided break time was over and were getting the guys ready for another round. As the internet feed gained traction, the viewer count rose to over 100. It took me about 20 minutes to pack everything up. Leaving the live feed computer for last, I noted over 400 viewers had tuned in. Surely, some were recording for later distribution. Disconnecting the setup, I called Victor Merrick. Hey Victor, sober. Yeah, who's this? Just a friend, Victor. I've got something you need to hear. Playing back the short audio clip of Brianna, I heard Victor's shocked response. Where'd you get that? Victor, she's in room 411 at the Holiday Inn. 2 big guys are with her, so if you're heading over, take a bat or something. They might not take kindly to a surprise visit. Victor didn't utter another word before the phone clicked off. I had just finished loading up the navigator when Victor leaped out of a Ford pickup, wielding a short aluminum Little League bat, and stormed into the building. I was exhausted but enjoyed the drive back to Lebanon. The motorhome was all set. I handed Dad a set of the new house keys. Mom planned to visit Clara at her parents' house in Lancaster, while Dad, along with some guys, would go to our house and move out all the furniture and belongings. They had plenty of space in the barn to store everything. Mom thought it would be intriguing to hear Clara's side of the story. My parents had one of the disposable phone's numbers. I kept my cell phone, but I planned to keep it turned off most of the time. Dad would take the stuff in the navigator back to Center X on Monday. It was late to start, but I wanted to be far away when Clara figured out what was happening. We had an RV lot reserved near Hagerstown, where we could get a good start on the interstate in the morning. The girls had planned the trip for us, and they did a pretty good job. The only input I had was to limit the distance between stops because the gas was getting expensive. I was glad I had taken a lot of cash with me. After 3 days at Disney, we were on our way to Chattanooga to see the aquarium. Lucy asked if she could call Mom. Hey Mom, it's Lucy. Just wanted to let you know that everything's fine. Yes, we're all having a good time, even Germaine. We miss you too. We'll call every couple of days to keep you updated. Okay, so tomorrow night we're heading to Orlando. We'll be at Disney for almost a week. We've got park tickets for every day. I couldn't believe it. My daughter was pulling one over on her mother. How clever. We're staying at the Orleans Hotel right in Disney World. It's going to be amazing. Okay, we'll chat in a few days. Bye. Lucy, I can't believe you did that. That was pretty sneaky. I know. Sophia and I thought it would be funny. Of course, you know your mom's probably on the phone right now booking a flight and a room. That's exactly what we thought. She deserves a vacation anyway, Sophia chimed in, while Germaine was engrossed in a DVD. 2 weeks later, Sophia called her mother. Clara was upset because she spent a whole week looking for us in Orlando. Sophia said we decided on Six Flags instead and tried to change the subject. Sophia and Lucy kept her on the phone for almost 20 minutes, listening to her rant and rave. Lucy finally apologized for misleading her and promised to call back in a couple of days. My mischievous girls were giggling for half an hour after they hung up. The following week was a whirlwind. We parked near the Smoky Mountains, and the kids kept themselves occupied while I handled business. Jesse served Clara with the divorce papers, catching her completely off guard. She was furious when he showed up unannounced. He explained the legal situation to her, showing her the evidence, pictures of her with Marcus, the group at room 411, and the DNA results. Lucy and Sophia were confirmed as mine, but not Germaine. Clara got a lawyer, but ultimately agreed to Jesse's terms. Meanwhile, Jesse visited Big Germaine at a hospital in Baltimore. Brianna's husband had inflicted serious injuries on both Germaine and Henry, and Victor was facing about 5 years in jail. I asked Jesse to help him. Both of my wife's lovers spent over a week in the hospital, receiving divorce papers while recovering. They had nowhere to go upon discharge. Germaine signed away his parental rights to his son, Germaine Jr. In addition to their broken bones, Victor had rendered them infertile. The doctors were not optimistic about their chances of recovery. Grace Bennett found a buyer for the house, though she struggled to convince Clara to sign all the necessary paperwork. Eventually, Clara relented. I didn't need to be present at the closing thanks to the power of attorney documents I had signed. Summer was drawing to a close rapidly. I had the opportunity to strengthen my bond with the kids. I spent a lot of time talking with Germaine, who enjoyed life in Lebanon, where his parents lived. I asked if he'd like to stay at the farm full-time, and he eagerly agreed. Dad was delighted to have him around, and I knew he'd be happy to take him in. Jesse prepared adoption papers so my parents could legally provide for and care for him. The only thing Jesse struggled with was convincing Clara to agree. Unbeknownst to Clara, Dad also legally changed Germaine's name to Jackson. The girls adored the school in Burlington. Late summer in Vermont was enchanting. After a few days settling them in, Jackson and I headed back to Pennsylvania. I checked in with Mr. Frost and confirmed everything was ready for my move to Alaska. Stella had already set up a temporary office, along with an apartment and a company car for me upon arrival. I left the Navigator with Dad to dispose of. 6 months later, things were finally calming down. The divorce was finalized. The girls were excelling in school and had scholarships to James Madison University in Virginia. They were thrilled about their newfound independence. They had heard little from Clara, aside from a few phone calls. Jackson's grades were improving, and he was deeply engrossed in his new hobby of raising bantam chickens. Clara visited him once, driving an old Ford Escort and claiming she had to sell the Volvo to cover divorce costs, which was a lie. I ended up footing both lawyers' bills. During her visit, she insisted on calling Jackson Germaine. Jackson corrected her each time and eventually walked away. Clara proceeded to complain to Dad about how unfair it was to take away the child's birthright. Dad chose not to engage and simply walked away with Jackson. Clara never returned to see him, receiving $11,000 from the house sale. Brianna and she celebrated the divorce in Las Vegas, blowing all the money in 4 days. I have no idea what Clara is up to now or where she's living. Perhaps she moved to Baltimore. Needless to say, I love Alaska. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.